Hi, welcome to the Aftermath Tales. Ready for a new story? Very well, let's begin.
The cursor blinked mockingly at me from the computer screen as I stared at the final boss battle sequence I'd been debugging for 3 hours straight. My neck ached, my eyes burned, but I was so close to finishing this level. Just a few more lines of code, and dinner's ready. Dianne called from the kitchen, her voice carrying that familiar edge it had developed over the past few months. I saved my work and stretched, joints popping like bubble wrap. Another 16-hour day, but it would be worth it when my RPG finally launched. 5 years of development, countless sleepless nights, and dreams of seeing, created by Shawn flash across millions of screens worldwide. My name is Shawn, and I'm 38 years old. I've been coding since I was 12, building websites to pay the bills, while pouring my heart into this game that's been consuming my life. My wife Dianne works as a sales manager at Apex Motors, and together we've built what I thought was a good life in our condo, just a few blocks from her workplace. The place is in her name. She had better credit when we moved in, but it's been home for 3 years now. I walked into the kitchen expecting to see the usual setup. Takeout containers from whatever restaurant Dianne had ordered from, maybe some conversation about her day at the dealership. Instead, I found her sitting at our small dining table with a glass of red wine in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. "What's that?" I asked, settling into the chair across from her. She slid the envelope across the table without meeting my eyes. "Open it." My hands trembled as I pulled out the papers inside. The letterhead made my stomach drop. Dissolution of marriage, petition for divorce. I stared at the papers, the words swimming together as my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. "Dianne, what is this? Is this some kind of joke?" She finally looked up, her expression cold and determined. "It's not a joke, Shawn. I want a divorce." "But why? I thought we were okay. I mean, sure, I've been busy with the game, but—" "Busy?" She laughed bitterly. "You've been obsessed. All you care about is that stupid program of yours. I want more than this, Shawn. I want an easier life." I felt like I was falling. "We can work this out. I know I've been distracted, but the game is almost done. Once it launches, I'll have more time, more money coming in from the website work." "I don't want to work this out." She took a long sip of wine, her wedding ring catching the light. "I'm seeing someone else, someone who can give me the life I deserve, someone who wants to take care of me so I don't have to work anymore." The words hit me like physical blows. "Who?" "Chester Smith. He's my department manager at Apex. He has a beautiful penthouse downtown, drives a different luxury car every week, and he actually pays attention to me." Chester Smith. I'd heard the name before. Dianne had complained about him being demanding and arrogant. Now I understood why she'd never seemed genuinely bothered by his attitude. "Dianne, please, we can fix this. I love you." She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. "I've already canceled the lease. We have until the end of the month. I'll be back in 2 weeks to pack my things, and you better be moved out by then." She grabbed her purse from the counter. "I'll be at Chester's place if you need anything. His penthouse has everything I've ever wanted." The front door closed with a finality that echoed through the suddenly empty condo. I sat at that kitchen table for hours after she left, the divorce papers scattered in front of me like the pieces of my shattered life. The silence was deafening. No clicking of keyboards, no hum of processors, no sound of Dianne moving around the apartment. Just me and the wreckage of everything I thought I knew. When the tears finally came, they came hard. 5 years of marriage gone. The woman I'd loved since college, who I'd worked every day to provide for, who I'd built my entire adult life around, gone to someone with a bigger bank account and fancier cars. By morning, I'd cried myself empty. My eyes were swollen, my throat raw, but something had shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was survival instinct, but I knew I had to move. I couldn't sit in this place for 2 more weeks, surrounded by reminders of what I'd lost. I spent the day online, searching for apartments I could afford on my inconsistent freelance income. Most places wanted proof of steady employment, security deposits I didn't have, or were too expensive for my budget. Finally, I found a 1-bedroom apartment in a building that had seen better days. The landlord was willing to work with me, and I could move in immediately. I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda Civic and a small U-Haul trailer. My computer equipment, my clothes, a few books, and the cheap furniture that was actually mine, it all fit surprisingly easily. 5 years of marriage reduced to what I could move in one trip. Before I left, I signed the divorce papers and left them on the kitchen table where she'd first shown them to me. No note, no explanation. What was there to say? As I drove away from the condo for the last time, I didn't look back. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. I barely felt it. I was too deep in code to care about paperwork. My new apartment was tiny, but it was mine. No one could take it away from me, and no one could tell me I was spending too much time on my stupid program. I threw myself into finishing the game with a fury I didn't know I possessed. Every line of code was a middle finger to everyone who'd said I was wasting my time. Every bug I fixed, every feature I polished, was proof that I was worth something. Game development is a brutal business. You can spend years creating something amazing, only to watch it disappear into the digital void because no one knows it exists. Marketing is everything. I spent my last savings on a modest advertising campaign, reached out to gaming bloggers and YouTube reviewers, and prayed to every digital deity that someone would notice. Beta testing revealed some issues, but nothing I couldn't fix. The testers loved the storyline, a tale of betrayal and redemption that felt surprisingly personal to write. I launched Shadow's End on multiple platforms simultaneously, holding my breath as the download counters ticked upward. The first week brought modest sales. The second week, a popular streamer discovered the game and featured it in a marathon session. By the third week, Shadow's End was trending on social media, and my bank account was showing numbers I'd never seen before. 5 years. That's how long it took to go from a broken man in a cheap apartment to the CEO of Neon Hollow Entertainment, a company that started in my living room and grew into a gaming powerhouse. Shadow's End wasn't just successful, it was a phenomenon. The sequel broke pre-order records, the merchandise line generated millions, the movie rights sold to a major studio. I moved the company into a sleek downtown office building, hired the best developers money could buy, and built games that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. We weren't just making entertainment, we were creating worlds where people could escape, grow, and find pieces of themselves they'd forgotten existed. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing concepts for our next major release. My assistant knocked on my office door with an expression I'd never seen before. "Mr. Larson, there are some very serious-looking people here to see you. They say they're from Titan Interactive." Titan Interactive, only the biggest gaming conglomerate in the world. They'd been acquiring smaller studios for years, turning creative powerhouses into cogs in their massive machine. I'd always sworn I'd never sell to them. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, they'd put an offer on the table that made my head spin, $340 million for Neon Hollow Entertainment, with provisions to keep me on as creative director if I wanted. "I'll need time to think about this," I told them. Of course, their lead negotiator smiled. "But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait forever." After they left, I sat in my office looking out at the city skyline, remembering a broken man signing divorce papers at a kitchen table. How far I'd come. How much everything had changed. I met Andrea at a coffee shop near the office. I'd been working late again, surviving on caffeine and determination, when I literally bumped into her while juggling my laptop bag and an oversized latte. She was beautiful in an understated way, intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses, brown hair pulled back in a professional bun, and a smile that made me forget how to speak for a moment. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, helping her collect the financial reports that had scattered across the floor. "Don't worry about it," she laughed. "I should have been watching where I was going. These quarterly analyses can be hypnotizing." "You're a financial analyst?" "Andrea Thompson, Morrison and Associates. And you're covered in coffee, which means you're either very clumsy or working too hard." I looked down at my shirt, surprised to find she was right. Shawn Larson, and definitely the second one. What started as an offer to buy her a replacement coffee turned into a 3-hour conversation about everything from market trends to favorite movies. Andrea was brilliant, funny, and refreshingly unimpressed by my success. She knew who I was. Everyone in the business world knew about Neon Hollow's meteoric rise, but she treated me like a person, not a bank account. We dated for 8 months before I proposed. Not with some elaborate public display, but quietly in her apartment on a Sunday morning while she made pancakes and explained why the Federal Reserve's latest decision would affect tech stocks. "Andrea Thompson Larson has a nice ring to it," she said, syrup dripping from her fork as she grinned at me. The wedding was small, perfect, everything my first marriage hadn't been. 2 months later, Andrea came home from the doctor with news that changed everything. "We're going to be parents," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. That night, I called the lawyers and accepted Titan Interactive's offer. $340 million was more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but more importantly, it meant freedom. Freedom to be present for my child's first steps, first words, first everything. Freedom to build something new without the pressure of keeping a company afloat. Andrea found me in my home office the next morning, staring at the signed contracts. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, her hand resting on her still flat belly. "No," I said, pulling her close, "but I might be having third and fourth thoughts about retirement. What if I started something new, something smaller, more personal?" She smiled, the same smile that had made me fall in love with her. "I was wondering when you'd get bored. What did you have in mind?" I was thinking, maybe it's time to go back to my roots, work from home, build something meaningful. Just me, my computer, and all the time in the world. The phone rang while I was in the nursery, painting clouds on the ceiling. Andrea was 6 months pregnant now, glowing and beautiful, napping in our bedroom while I tried to create a perfect world for our daughter. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. "Hello, Shawn." The voice hit me like a physical blow. 5 years vanished in an instant, and I was back at that kitchen table, staring at divorce papers. "Dianne," I replied. "I saw you on the news," she said, her voice carefully casual. "Congratulations on the sale, $340 million. That's incredible." I set down my paintbrush, my hand suddenly unsteady. "How did you get this number?" "I still know people." A pause. "I heard you got married, and that you're expecting." Through the baby monitor, I could hear Andrea stirring in the bedroom. My wife, my real partner, the mother of my child, the life I'd built from the ashes of what Dianne had destroyed. "What do you want, Dianne?" "I wanted to talk to you. About us. About what happened. There is no us, and what happened was you chose someone else's money over our marriage." "Shawn, please. Things aren't... Chester and I, we're having problems. And when I saw you on TV, talking about your success, about how you built this empire from nothing, I realized I made a mistake." I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. But this time, it wasn't heartbreak. It was pity. "You didn't make a mistake, Dianne. You made a choice. Just like I'm making one now." Before she could respond, I hung up the phone and turned it off. Then I went back to painting clouds, preparing a world full of infinite possibilities for the child who would never know the man I used to be. But I should have known that Dianne never gave up that easily. 3 days later, Andrea came home from work with a strange expression on her face. "Someone called me at the office today," she said, settling into the couch with a cup of herbal tea. "A woman named Dianne." My blood ran cold. "What did she say?" Andrea's laugh was sharp and humorless. "She told me that she was back and that she was going to take what was rightfully hers, that I was just a placeholder until she could reclaim her life with you." "Andrea, She held up a hand, smiling. "I laughed at her." "You laughed?" "I told her I knew exactly who she was and what she'd done to you. I said it was pretty convenient that she suddenly realized her mistake right after you sold your company for hundreds of millions." Andrea sipped her tea calmly. "Then I told her that if she called me again, I'd have my lawyers handle it." I sat beside her, pulling her close. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you she might try something." "Honey, I'm not worried about some desperate woman who threw away a good man for money and is now realizing what she lost. I'm worried about why she thinks she has any claim on our life." What I didn't tell Andrea was that Dianne had called me 4 more times that day. I'd let them all go to voicemail, but her messages were getting increasingly desperate and unhinged. It took me 3 weeks to piece together what had happened to Dianne after she left me. I hired a private investigator, not because I cared about her well-being, but because I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The report made for grim reading. Dianne had quit her job at Apex Motors 2 months after our divorce was finalized, confident that Chester would support her in the lifestyle she craved. For almost a year, it had worked. Chester's department manager's salary and commissions had funded shopping trips, expensive dinners, and the penthouse lifestyle she'd always wanted. But Chester Smith, as it turned out, was living far beyond his means. Credit cards maxed out, loans from questionable sources, and a gambling problem that had started small and grown into a monster. When the creditors came calling, the penthouse was the first thing to go. Dianne had learned about Chester's debts the same day she discovered he was seeing Sarah Mitchell, a younger sales associate from his department. Sarah was 3 months pregnant with Chester's child when he threw Dianne out of their cramped 2-bedroom apartment. She's been unemployed for over a year, the investigator told me over the phone. No recent work history, no references willing to vouch for her. She's been staying in cheap motels, living off what's left of her savings. Word is she's getting desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. I should have remembered that. It started with small things. A car that seemed to follow the same route as mine to the grocery store. A woman in sunglasses sitting alone at the coffee shop Andrea and I frequented. Flowers delivered to our house with no card, no sender information. Maybe I'm being paranoid, I told Andrea one evening as we prepared dinner together. Your ex-wife called my office threatening to take back her life with you. Paranoia might be justified right now. She paused, her hand resting on her now prominent belly. I've been noticing things too. What kind of things? Someone's been through our mailbox, not taking anything, just looking. And yesterday I could have sworn I saw someone watching our house from across the street. That night, I installed a security system. Cameras, motion detectors, alarms on all the doors and windows. It felt like overkill, but the alternative, something happening to Andrea or our baby, was unthinkable. The cameras caught her on the 3rd night. Dianne, thinner than I remembered, walking slowly past our house at 2 a.m. She stopped at the mailbox, looked up at our bedroom windows, and stood there for almost 10 minutes before walking away. I called the police the next morning and filed a report. Restraining order, trespassing complaint, the whole legal arsenal. But I knew it wouldn't be enough to stop someone who had nothing left to lose. After selling the company, Andrea and I had bought a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood, not a mansion, but a comfortable home with a swimming pool, flower gardens, and a vegetable patch where Andrea loved to spend her mornings. It was our sanctuary, far from the cramped apartment where I'd rebuilt my life and the condo where my first marriage had died. I want you to stop working, I told Andrea one evening as we sat by the pool, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. At least until after the baby comes, especially with everything that's been happening with Dianne. Andrea was in her 8th month, her pregnancy making even simple tasks more challenging. The stress of Dianne's escalating behavior wasn't helping. I've been thinking the same thing, she admitted, her hand resting on her belly. Some of my clients are understanding, but others, she sighed. Maybe it's time. That decision probably saved her life. 2 days later, I'd gone to the hardware store to pick up supplies for the nursery when my phone rang. Andrea's name flashed on the screen. Shawn, you need to come home now. She's here. What? Who's there? I asked. Dianne. She's in our backyard. I could hear Andrea's voice getting shaky. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I saw her through the window. She's just standing by the pool, staring at the house. She looks terrible, Shawn, like she's been living in her car. Call 911. Right now. I'm 5 minutes away. I already did. But Shawn, she's not trying to break in. She's just standing there, like she belongs here. When I arrived home, the police were already there, taking Andrea's statement. Dianne was gone, but the damage was done. Andrea was shaken, but trying to stay calm. She was just standing by the pool for about 10 minutes, Andrea told me and the officer. Then she walked closer to the house, looking through the sliding glass doors into the kitchen. When she saw me watching her, she started talking. What did she say? the officer asked. She was speaking loudly through the glass, saying this should have been her house, her life, that I stole what belonged to her. She said, "This is all wrong. This should be mine. I was here first." Andrea's hand found mine. Then what happened? When I reached for my phone to call 911, she saw me and ran off toward the front yard. By the time the police got here, she was gone. The police arrived 20 minutes later, followed by a locksmith who changed every lock in the house. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. Dianne had crossed a line, and people who break into pregnant women's homes don't usually stop escalating. That night, I hired private security. 2 guards, rotating shifts, watching our house around the clock. It felt like living in a fortress, but I wasn't taking any chances. The game had changed. Dianne wasn't just making desperate phone calls anymore. She was making this personal, and she was making it dangerous. The story was far from over, and for the first time since building my empire, I felt like I was losing control of the narrative. Andrea's final prenatal appointment was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday. At 38 weeks, she was uncomfortable but excited. Dr. Martinez had said the baby could come any day now. I'd been looking forward to this appointment, hoping we'd get good news about the delivery. "I'm so ready to meet our daughter," Andrea said as we drove through the medical district in my F-250. She'd finally given in and let me buy the truck after the security concerns started. "Safe and reliable," I'd told her, though I hadn't mentioned that part of me felt better knowing we were in something substantial. I was checking my rearview mirror out of habit when I saw it, a beat-up sedan 3 cars back, the same one I'd noticed when we left the house. My stomach dropped when the car changed lanes to stay behind us. "Andrea," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I think we're being followed." She turned in her seat, wincing slightly. "Is it?" "I think so." I watched the mirror as the sedan weaved aggressively through traffic, getting closer. The driver was wearing a baseball cap, but something about the way she hunched over the wheel looked familiar. We stopped at a red light. The sedan pulled up directly behind us, close enough that I could see the driver clearly now. Dianne. Her face was gaunt, her eyes wild with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Oh God, Shawn, what is she doing?" I could see Diane's mouth moving, like she was talking to herself or screaming at us. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, and she kept looking between us and something on her passenger seat. The light turned green. I accelerated normally, but Diane's car lurched forward, closing the distance between us. She was right on our bumper now, so close I couldn't see her headlights. "Shawn, I'm scared." "It's okay, we're almost." In the rearview mirror, I saw Diane's car suddenly drop back, then accelerate hard. The engine roared as she bore down on us. "Andrea, hold on. Brace yourself." I gripped the steering wheel and pressed the accelerator, trying to pull away, but we were boxed in by traffic. Andrea's hands flew to her belly, her eyes wide with terror. Then everything went black. The first thing I heard were sirens. The second thing was Andrea crying. "The baby," she was saying. "Something's wrong. The baby's coming." I opened my eyes to find myself slumped forward against the steering wheel, a sharp pain shooting through my neck. We were still in the truck, but we'd spun sideways across 2 lanes. Steam was rising from somewhere behind us, and there were people everywhere, other drivers who'd stopped, someone directing traffic around us. "Andrea, are you hurt?" I turned to see her clutching her stomach, her face pale and drawn with pain. "My water broke," she whispered. "Shawn, the baby's coming now." Emergency responders were already working to get her out of the vehicle. Sir, don't move." A paramedic was at my window. "We need to check you both for injuries." "My wife is in labor," I said. "She needs to get to the hospital right now." Within minutes, Andrea was on a stretcher being loaded into an ambulance. I climbed in beside her, my head still spinning from the impact. "What happened to the other driver?" I asked the EMT as we sped toward the hospital. "She's being taken to trauma. Pretty badly injured from what I could see, but that's all I know," the EMT said. "Right now, let's focus on getting your wife and baby safely delivered." At the hospital, everything became a blur of activity. Andrea was rushed into delivery, and 3 hours later, our daughter Emma was born, healthy, perfect, and completely unaware of the trauma that had brought her into the world early. The police came to take our statements while Andrea was recovering. Detective Peters had dealt with our stalking reports before, and she looked grim as she filled out the paperwork. "We have 6 witnesses who all say the same thing," she told me. "The other driver was following you erratically, then deliberately rammed your vehicle from behind. With her history of harassment and the restraining order violations, we're looking at attempted vehicular assault, reckless endangerment, and stalking charges." "What's her condition?" I asked. "Critical but stable. Both legs severely fractured, possible permanent disability. She'll be facing charges from her hospital bed, and when she's well enough, she'll be going to prison for a long time." As I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully in Andrea's arms, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. Dianne had finally gone too far, and this time there would be real consequences. The nightmare was over. Our new life could finally begin. 3 days after the accident, I was heading back from visiting Andrea and Emma in the maternity ward when I decided to stop by the information desk. I'd been wondering about Diane's condition, not out of concern, but because I needed to know what we were dealing with legally. "She's in room 314, trauma wing, 4th floor," the nurse told me after checking with security. Dianne, I hadn't planned to see her, but something inside me needed closure. I needed to look her in the eye and end this chapter of my life once and for all. "I'd like to speak with her," I told the guard. He checked with his partner, then nodded. "I'll come in with you. 5 minutes." I pushed open the door and saw her lying there, both legs elevated in casts and braces. I was shocked by how bad her injuries looked. I hadn't realized the extent of the damage from the crash. She looked smaller, diminished, but when she saw me, her face lit up with desperate hope. "Shawn," she whispered, trying to sit up. "You came for me. I knew you would. Are you here to take me back?" I stared at her, amazed at how delusional she still was. Even after nearly unaliving my pregnant wife, she thought I was here for reconciliation. "No, Dianne," I said calmly, my voice steady but cold. "I'm here to tell you that Andrea and our daughter are safe. They're healthy, and I will never leave them for you." Her face crumpled. "But Shawn, we can try again. I made a mistake with Chester, but now nothing." I stepped closer, the officer watching carefully. "You want to know the truth? I could have given you everything you ever wanted. The house, the luxury, the easy life, all of it. But you left me when I had nothing because you thought you found someone better." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "I was wrong. I see that now. You left me broken and alone for money, Dianne. And now I'm deeply in love with my wife and my daughter. I'm happy. I'm content. My life is complete without you." I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You are nothing to me now. Less than nothing. You're just a woman who once lived in my past, and that's where you'll stay." She was sobbing now, reaching toward me with one hand. "Please, Shawn, I'm sorry." "Save your apologies for the judge," I said, turning toward the door. "I'll see you in court." I walked out without looking back, leaving her crying in that hospital bed. The officer followed me out and closed the door behind us. As I walked back to Andrea's room, I felt something I didn't expect: complete peace. The woman who had haunted my dreams and threatened my family was finally just what she deserved to be. Nothing. 6 months later, I stood in a crowded courtroom as the judge prepared to sentence Dianne. She sat in a wheelchair at the defendant's table, avoiding eye contact with me and Andrea. "Dianne Marie Smith," the judge said, "you have been found guilty of attempted vehicular assault, aggravated stalking, criminal trespass, and reckless endangerment of a pregnant woman. I hereby sentence you to 12 years in state prison." As they wheeled her away, she finally looked at me one last time. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no satisfaction, just nothing. The nightmare was truly over. 5 years later, I closed my laptop and stretched as Emma burst through my home office door, her dark hair in pigtails and paint on her hands. "Daddy, Mommy says dinner's ready," she announced, climbing onto my lap. "What are you making?" she asked, looking at my computer screen. "A new game about a brave princess," I told her, tickling her until she giggled. Andrea appeared in the doorway, her hand resting on her growing belly. Our second child was due in 3 months, a boy we'd decided to name Michael. "How's the project coming?" she asked. "Great. Working from home has its advantages." I gestured around the office in our new house, bigger than the last one, with a proper yard and Andrea's beautiful garden. After selling Neon Hollow Entertainment, I'd started Larson Interactive from this very room. Just me, creating indie games, but it felt perfect. I could walk Emma to school, be there for every important moment, and still build worlds for others to explore. Emma ran off to wash her hands. Andrea took my hand as we walked to the kitchen together. "Happy?" she asked, smiling. I looked around at our home, heard Emma's laughter from the kitchen, felt Andrea's hand in mine and our son moving in her belly. "Completely," I said. The broken man who'd once signed divorce papers at a kitchen table was gone. In his place was someone who'd learned that the best success wasn't building something big, it was building something meaningful. And this life we'd created together was the most meaningful thing I'd ever built.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.